Hello and welcome to Improving Scottish Football. My name is Kieran, and today on the show I've got David MacDonald, who runs Pie and Bovril. So David is a bit of a guru of the Scottish game, and he knows the ins and outs more than most. We are going to be talking about what makes Scottish football unique, what is its USP. We're going to be talking about league reconstruction, and we're also going to be talking about Hampden as well. Now, I would love to continue to build the audience here on this podcast, so I've actually got a bit of a favour to ask. Have a think of someone you know who might like to listen to this podcast as well. It might be a friend, a colleague. Send them a message just now and say, hey, there's this new podcast I'm listening to. It's called Improving Scottish Football. You might like to listen to it. The more people we can get involved, the more chance we have of instigating change. So anything you guys can do to help spread the word is hugely appreciated. A little bit of fun on the side. I am running leagues in both fantasy football games. So that's Fantasy Football Scotland. There is an Improving Scottish Football League in the public section, and FPL for the English Premiership. I know it's English football, but it's a great FPL game. You'll be able to find the league code in the show notes. It is M1DKEQ, but like I say, I'm not expecting you to remember that. Check out the show notes, join the leagues. I'm also on the lookout for partners. If your brand wants to reach hundreds of passionate, progressive Scottish football fans, please get in contact. improvingscottishfootball@gmail.com. And now that has been said, it's on with the show. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I am delighted to be welcoming David MacDonald to the pod. David, how are you?
Very well, thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Good. So first of all, can you just give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself and obviously your connection to Scottish football?
My name's David MacDonald, otherwise known as Div, and probably Scottish football circles. I set up the Pie and Bovril website in 2003. We were 20 years old this year, which is a online forum community for fans of Scottish football clubs at every level, from the professional game all the way down through to the amateur game, to meet up and discuss all things Scottish football and beyond. And I also run the Twitter account of the same name. So I've been a St Mirren supporter my whole life. I've been a season ticket holder over 40 years, which is why I'm bald. I just absolutely love the game. I'm really lucky to have kind of stumbled across P&B back then. It was almost a bit of an accident, to be honest, but I'm a web designer to trade, so that's kind of where it came from, why I set the site up, and it's grown and grown. It's kind of had its ups and downs over the years, but we still have a good 5-6 million visits a month, about 40,000 really active users on it. So yeah, it's been really good, and it's been fun to be part of that journey.
Yeah, that's a very happy accident. So one of the reasons obviously I want to get you on is because you live and breathe Scottish football, probably more than most. Let's start on the positives. What do you think works well about Scottish football? What are your favourite aspects of it?
I actually think there's loads of great aspects of the game, and I really try and be as positive as possible, because I think one of the things, this is more a Scottish thing rather than just a football thing, we're so down about everything. There's people always moaning and complaining and doing ourselves down, but of course there's, as we'll come on to, there's things in the game that you'd improve. But I think the physical number of people that go through the gates in our game, that's as well documented as for the size of country we are and the number of teams we have, is incredible. I think our fans are hugely passionate, loyal, and full of humour, which is a Scottish trait for sure. I think our game is incredible in terms of some of the things that happen, which is why Twitter accounts and forums like Pie and Bovril survive, because there's always something to discuss. There's always controversy. There's always something to laugh about, somebody to get slagged. But I think I don't actually think there's, it's massively broken either. I'm probably going to contradict myself as we go on, but I actually think the leagues are not too far off being really, really good. I think the split, I'm a massive fan of the split, which I've been very vocal about on Twitter over the years, and I know a lot of people don't like it, but I absolutely love it. And that's despite my team being in the wrong side of that split for pretty much my whole life, other than last season. So I think the playoffs, again, they could be improved, but I think they've been a great addition. And I love the game. I think it's, as I say, what's and all, it's tremendous. It's a really good sport to be part of. It's a good community to be part of. And I say there's always something happening, which is what makes it enjoyable and what makes it what it is.
Yeah, and St Mirren had an amazing season last year. That must have been amazing to have experienced. And also, I guess, it's fan owned. I'm assuming you are one of the fans who own a part of it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean it was a good season. Amazing. I'm quite old, so I can remember amazing seasons when we finished third and things like that, and went into Europe and won the Scottish Cup and all that sort of stuff. That's amazing. It was great. Don't get me wrong. I sound really ungrateful, but to have got top six, the dream then was to get Europe. That's what we all wanted, was one shot at Europe, and obviously we came up short, which was disappointing. Didn't win any of our games after the split. But as I say, I'm sounding ungrateful. It was a great season. It was enjoyable not being part of the relegation fight just for once. We played some good stuff at times. We kind of came unstuck a little bit towards the end of the season when we kind of ran out of gas, I think, more than anything else. But I guess that was to be expected. Quite a small squad. A few injuries took its toll. But no, it was great. And the club is, I think, in a good place in terms of the relationship between the boards and the fans is probably as strong as it's been, partly because we do own the club. And we've got a couple of fan reps on the board. Keith Larsley's been a great appointment. He's been excellent since he came in. He just gets it. He gets what being a provincial Scottish football fan is about, and what a club of our size and the community is all about. And that's been great. And we do a lot of good things. There's loads of good things happening at St Mirren on a match day. There's things happening off the park, same as there is up and down the country at loads of clubs. And again, if I'm being critical actually of Scottish football, is a lot of the clubs don't champion enough what they've been doing. I think we saw it all the way through the pandemic. Some of the stuff that was going on was absolutely unbelievable at really small clubs, helping out the local community and things like that. And I think we should celebrate that more and shout about it a little bit more. And St Mirren are definitely, we're doing a lot of good stuff on and off the park.
If you don't mind, just tell me a little bit more about that. You're saying, lots of things happening on a match day. Just give me some examples, just for someone who doesn't know.
Yeah, it's just we have a guy, Colin Bright, who is the Paisley Panda. So obviously that just used to be, he'd run on the pitch before the game and run about throwing lollies at the kids and things like that. But Colin's really passionate about the match day experience, and what's him and the club and Smizer have done is create a kind of, it's a small scale, don't get me wrong, but it is a fan zone experience before the game, mostly for younger kids. So he'll set up bouncy castles and inflatable football pitches and all sorts of carry on all around the kind of family stand, with the aim of getting kids to come to the game early and enjoy and get involved. And that's fans of home and away. Obviously, in Scotland, you're dependent on the weather, so it doesn't happen outside too often. But when it does, it's great. You walk past it, you see dozens of kids all having a great time, all getting involved, all doing things around the stadium that just wouldn't happen without his energy and without the backing of the supporters trust. And it's great. We've got another fan group called Marching In, which I've taken one of the things that St Mirren Park, or the new St Mirren Park, let's call it that, gets criticised for, was being a bit of a grey battleship. And what Marching In did was they basically created murals all the way through the inside of the stadium, like basically fan art of famous St Mirren moments and things like that. But it looks amazing, and it's really given a bit of soul to the place. And then we've got the North Bank group as well, which is our ultra group, if you like. and they've basically created an atmosphere in the stadium, which is tremendous as well. A real energetic bunch of younger fans who travel home and away, but at home it's where you really see the difference. They've basically created a whole section. Again, as you see now among most of the clubs, even going down the leagues, which is absolutely brilliant. Absolutely love that. Big fan of the energy they bring to games. So there's loads and loads of good things. I could sit and talk about good things all the time. There's, again, like everything else, there's some things I think the club could do better here and there, but I think we're miles better than we used to be in terms of engaging with the supporters. And part of that is obviously because we do own the club. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I love these fan zones. Just finding new ways to to interact with the match goers and just entice people along. Maybe people who aren't like overly interested in the football per se. Maybe family members and stuff might be more likely to come along, if there's those little added bonuses. I just wanted to kind of touch on ticket sales a little bit, because I think St Mirren, like a lot of Scottish clubs, have seen quite a big rise in ticket sales, and I think this is again another reason for optimism. Maybe in this era of Scottish football, but it seems like there's more and more people interested in going along to matches. Is that something that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously last season we had quite a big upswing, which is partly to do with the club doing well. There's no doubt about that. You can't really sugarcoat it, as people want to see a good team on the pitch. But the club are doing a huge amount of work to try and encourage more young fans to come along, again, like other clubs as well. So we give a lot of tickets out to local schools and things like that. We have a designated family stand where, the thinking is that, kids that sit in there, you're not supposed to be any swearing and things like that. It's supposed to be a nice atmosphere for really young kids to come to and enjoy the game. And as I said, we've got the fan zone to encourage younger kids as well. And I think that's, goes without saying, that's your bread and butter. If you can get kids hooked at that age, because let's be honest, Murn won't win every game. It won't always be enjoyable on the pitch. So you have to give them something to remember the match day experience by. And I think I want to go back there, even if the football wasn't brilliant, which there's no guarantees that any club it's going to be brilliant any week. It's easy to buy tickets now because you can just scan a QR code and buy it with a couple of taps on your mobile and then scan your mobile to get in, which again, a lot of clubs are doing that now, and it's just making it easier, taking the barrier away, which I've always felt our previous ticketing platform was appalling. A few years ago, it was really, really hard to buy a ticket on your mobile. So all of that's been improved, and it's much better, and it's just easier. And if you make things easy, then people will buy it. As I say, I'm a web designer myself, and so I'm used to how to convert visits to sales. And if you put barriers in the way of people, they won't buy. And that goes down to everything that you're selling online. So football tickets should be as easy as possible. And I think we're getting better at it.
Yep, completely agree. We're going to come on, Dave, shortly to obviously changes that you would like to to see. Before we do that, the previous episode that we did was all about marketing, and given your kind of knowledge of Scottish football, how would you be selling it? What do you think is the USP of Scottish football if we're trying to attract more eyes? I'm thinking more in terms of the audience, an international audience, or even trying to get more viewers from down in England interested in Scottish football. How would you be selling it?
I think at the moment, what we have over some of the bigger leagues is that our football it feels real, it feels personal, whereas I think some of the bigger clubs down south have lost that identity. I mean, you saw the kind of famous clip a few years ago, the Liverpool fan, and he was basically going, "What's happened to our club? What is, it's just basically full of tourists and things like that." And I think the bigger clubs are amazing to watch, and they've got all the facilities, some amazing players, blah blah blah. But it doesn't sometimes, to me, feel like real football. It feels like it's lost its soul a wee bit. And I feel as though, although we do have two massive clubs compared to the other 40 clubs, we still have a real game here, and it is hugely authentic, it's passionate. And I think the other sort of the values that I think we should be promoting, that our game is, warts and all, is real. It makes it sound kind of a bit pathetic that it's real, but it just, in the age where things like Saudi Arabia now trying to become a league. It's just money. And I sometimes feel the lack of money in Scotland isn't necessarily a bad thing. It does frustrate me a lot, and I think there should be more money there. But some of the money that's now bandied about down south, for example, is just ridiculous. It's just mind blowing. And I think as I say, I think some of those clubs are in danger of losing their identity and their soul. And I think we've retained that, probably partly because we're all skint. But yeah, that's what I would see anyway. I think that the passion that the supporters have for the game here is definitely something we should build on as well. But I suppose you could say that about supporters in every league. But yeah, that's what I think our USP is versus some of the bigger leagues.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, so changes then, improvements in Scottish football. What would you love to see improvements on?
I think the obvious one, if you ask most football fans in Scotland, would be we'd like a slightly bigger top flight. I come at this from a kind of more realistic point of view than a lot of people, because the stock answer is everybody goes, oh, we need 16 or 18 or whatever. I do appreciate that the broadcasters want the possibility of 4 Old Firm games a season. Like it or not, that is not going to change. So in my view, and one of the biggest bugbear I have is that the Championship has been strangled, because I really like the Championship. I've been there as a football fan, and I feel it's a great league, but I feel it's strangled. So I'd like to see a slightly bigger top flight. 14 for me would be the optimal setup. Appreciating that you can't then split that 7 and 7 because you can't have teams sitting out. And because I'm such a big split fan, my view would be that I would split after 2 games, home and away, a top 6 and a bottom 8. And those top 6 and bottom 8 would play each other twice. So the top 6 teams would actually play 36 games. But that's okay, because they're also the teams that are probably taking part in Europe and moaning about the number of games they're playing and blah, blah, blah. You give those games a little bit more gravitas. The bottom 8 then would play each other home and away again. So you're fixing the one vagary with the split where teams don't always play each other home and away twice. Now, that is still 4 meetings, which I guess a lot of people think is too much. But for me, if that was a 2 up, 2 down scenario, and the third bottom team just had a one-off playoff with the third team in the Championship, I think that's better than what we have at the moment. And that's what you're looking for. You're like, how can we make what we've got better? So for me, the split is great. Keep the split, keep the playoffs, release that stranglehold a little bit on the Championship. Now, if I'm talking about potentially 3 teams covering the Championship, maybe that also needs to be a slightly bigger league as well. But that's where I would start anyway. I think 16 is a bit of a pipe dream, if I'm being honest. It's too big. But I think 14 would be a big improvement, and it would allow teams like St Mirren's and Motherwell and Johnstone's to breathe a little bit more, and to know that if they do go down, fairly good chance of coming back up. Whereas at the moment, it's really, really hard to get back up. As we found, we were down there the whole of the 90s in the old First Division. 10 years we were down there, and nearly went down to third tier a couple of times along the way as well. You got big teams, Dunfermline, Falkirk, sitting in that third tier, which is where they deserve to be on football merit, of course they do, but it'd be good to see teams having a little bit more chance to move up the leagues. I think it's just a little bit tight at the moment.
Yeah, I think 14 is probably the most realistic thing that we can hope to achieve, because we've also got to remember, the voting system and how conservative Scottish football can be at times, how resistant to change it can be. So if you're asking for effectively, presumably it'll be an 11-1 vote on this sort of thing, there's no way, I don't think that 11 clubs would vote for a jump to 16 or above. I think 14, you actually have a chance of potentially getting through if you sell it in the right way.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way I see it. You've got to be realistic. We'd all like a bigger league, but at the same time, you've got to be balanced the needs of the broadcasters, the sponsors, which, first and foremost, football should be about the fans, and I'm very passionate about that. The broadcasters should be second fiddle. That doesn't sometimes feel the way when when Aberdeen fans are getting chucked down to Glasgow and 12:30 on a Sunday and things like that. It doesn't feel particularly fair, but they do provide such a lot of income, and they have to be respected, I suppose. And from that point of view, they do need, or they want, those 4 games. Whether we'll say, if we're not Rangers and Celtic fans, you kind of can scream to the heavens about how unfair it is and who cares, but it is a fact of life that that's the games they really do care about. So you have to come up with a model that suits that, or at least gives that possibility, and then hopefully gives a little bit more breathing room for teams moving up and down, and a little bit more variety. Maybe the number of games I'm proposing would be too many. Maybe the bottom 8 just need to play each other once. I don't know, but as I say, the one complaint everybody has about the split is this home and away thing, and teams sometimes having to go somewhere 3 times and all that is. And this fixes that. So that would be my kind of tuppence worth. That would be one thing I would definitely want to change.
Yeah. So it was 36 games for the top 6, and it would be what, 40 games for the
40,
bottom? Yeah.
Which could be too many. It could be too many.
That's all right.
But yeah, I've lived through a 44 game top flight season when we had 12 teams and everybody played each other 4 times. So
yeah,
it's doable. So yeah, that would be my fag paper approach to. I probably need fleshed out somewhat, but that would be something that I'd like to think the bottom 8 would be playing for something, but I'm not quite sure what they'd be playing for, other than a playoff or a European spot or something. But that would be adding more games on, and then it becomes just a bit messy.
Well, I have good news for you and your fag packet approach, in that I'm going to do an episode specifically about league reconstruction. I think I really like, obviously, the idea of a 14 team league. I think for most people, I think that would probably satisfy a lot of fans. Yeah, it's just a case of, just getting the right system in place. But I think we can definitely do it. So we'll hopefully lay out a couple of different options. I think obviously there's huge benefits as well, not just because of the monotony and just giving fans a little bit more excitement, but even little things like, you're talking about breathing room. That breathing room would allow clubs to play young Scottish players, for example, which we're just not getting at the moment because there's so much pressure on managers and clubs to get results, and we're just not seeing a lot of talent getting that opportunity. Is that fair?
I think it is fair. I think there has been quite a few young players coming through of late, over the last couple of years for sure. But I totally agree. I think the pressure on the management at clubs is first and foremost. I heard Malcolm Mackay even saying today, which priority for the new season is like survival, and that is it. We can't afford to drop down. You see Dundee United, the financial hit that's going to have on them dropping down, even if that is for one season. It's fallen off a cliff, and it causes huge disruption at these clubs, and they then have a dilemma: do they keep the academy going, or do they not? Or do they cut back? Or where are they going to save money? And it also then, I think, just breeds negative football, where teams are so scared that they don't play the way that they probably should all the time, because they're just set up to try and not lose.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. Fluidity of Championship up to Premiership, but also it'd be just nice to see that throughout the leagues, and also even out of the pyramid, into Lowland and Highland as well, because there's such a bottleneck there. Yeah. So great. Okay, so league reconstruction is probably your number one, I guess. Are there any other kind of big issues for you that you would love to see addressed?
I'm a big believer in that alcohol should be allowed in football. I actually think that's quite an easy one to fix as well. Makes me sound just like somebody that can't watch football without a drink, but we actually have a supporters bar in the stadium. It's a kind of members only. I think it's because it's restricted to a couple of hundred people, so we can go there and have a beer in the stadium before a game. And it's one of these mental rules that as long as you can't see the pitch, you can have a beer. Now, somebody needs to tell me why 43 years after there was a riot in a game in Glasgow that we still have rules like this, because it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to me. And I've been. We were talking earlier before we came on the show about Germany. So I was in Berlin recently for a stag do, and we went to the Hertha Berlin against Stuttgart game. Now everybody on outside the stadium is drinking beer and listening to music in a big fan zone. You walk in the stadium, the first thing people do is run up to you, go, do you want a beer? You can have a beer at your seat. It's modern entertainment. It's a day out. It's an afternoon out. So why can't you have a beer? It makes no sense to me that pubs up and down the country, people are staying there till 10 to 3, drinking quite happily and then bowling into games, but they're not allowed to go into a ground and have a beer. And for me, the really simple solution to this, I know everybody screams about, oh, it would be terrible. Well, you just classify the games the same as England does: high risk, medium risk, low risk. And if it's a high risk game, according to the police, or if it's a game that has trouble, then the taps are turned off. It's quite simple. Whereas at the moment, we're all paying for a riot that happened 43 years ago, or because there's a feeling that certain clubs might not be able to behave. Everybody pays the price for that. And for me, it just makes no sense. And again, I'm not even suggesting it would be particularly enjoyable to stand having a plastic cup of really bad Carlsberg or whatever it'll be in a frozen cold course in January. I'm not, but at least give us the choice. Give us the choice, because it's just, and it's what really annoys me is obviously because every other sport you can do it: ice hockey, at rugby, at cricket, any sport you name, but football apparently is just, oh, like, we absolutely can't have that, and it drives me nuts. I'm not a fan of that at all.
Yeah, you are speaking to the converted here. But obviously, I do appreciate, obviously, there's a huge range of opinions on this, and it's obviously not something that can happen overnight. But what I would really love to see is actually some sort of big conversation happening about it, and some trials. Start out with certain leagues, potentially work your way up, or certain clubs and work your way up. At least give it a chance, or at least have that conversation, because at the moment everything just gets shut down and there's no conversation. And Scottish football fans are treated as third class citizens because, concert goers, rugby fans, any other, pretty much sport or entertainment experience in Scotland, you can drink. It's just football fans that are not trusted. And the other big issue for me is that English fans can drink alcohol at football, and nobody can tell me that fans of English football are better or more responsible than fans of Scottish football.
Yeah, totally. And we've all been to games down south, and I think people assume that if you're bringing alcohol into football, people are bringing their carryouts through the turnstiles and things like that. I mean, in England, you can have a beer in the concourse out of a plastic cup or a plastic bottle. The taps get closed at 2:45. You're not allowed to sit in your seat with a beer. You can get one at half time in the concourse again, and that's it. It's not. People aren't sitting there getting steaming drunk. It's not really. It's just an enjoyable part of a day out, is sometimes having a beer. And for me, people should have the choice. And at the moment, we don't have that choice for reasons that I'm really unaware of. But as a country, we've got a really bad, bad kind of relationship with alcohol, and I think that comes all the way from the government down. We went up to Montrose on Saturday to see some beautiful day, and we went to open some beers on the train on the way back, and they came up and said, "You're not allowed to drink on the train anymore." And you're like, why not? Why? And I guess it's because people have been behaving badly or that, but it just seems, again, a bit unnecessary. But hey ho, that's where we are.
I actually saw an article about what Switzerland do for their fans when they travel to games. So they actually put on specific fan trains, which are basically it's only for fans. Public transport to and from the game, and the fans can booze in the train. They can make a mess, and they do make a mess, but that's all kind of calculated into the whole kind of process of it. You plan and you prepare for these things, and you manage and control it. because otherwise, if you do still ban alcohol, it just all becomes a bit of a backstreet thing where people are downing Bucky and vodka and smuggling stuff into the ground. People wouldn't have to smuggle stuff into the ground, if there was a legal and orderly way of actually buying it, properly, in the stadium.
Yeah, it's just, I totally agree. The rule is there because, as I keep saying, from an event that happened over 40 years ago. I mean, it's incredible that nobody's had a grown-up conversation about it since. But as soon as you do start, as you say, it just gets shut down straight away. Like, football fans are animals. Football fans are this, that, the next thing. It's the same people that will go to other sports. I know quite a lot of St Mirren fans that used to go to games, home games, and then would go to see Glasgow Clan play ice hockey on the Saturday night. So they'd have a whole sporting day. So it's the same people. It's just a different sport. I just think it just annoys me that the classification of football fans has been untrustworthy. I think it's really unfair.
Yeah, big time. So tell me a little bit more about this this trip you went on to see Hertha Berlin then, because obviously we just talked about the the alcohol aspect of it, but the whole fan experience of going to a game in Germany compared to going to a game in Scotland. What do you think we could learn, from the Bundesliga, for example?
Yeah, I mean it's going to be the dream of Scotland to hopefully get there for next summer, because the infrastructure in Germany is incredible for moving around. I mean, every city is really well connected. The trains are tremendous. The tram network's tremendous in the big cities. As part of your match ticket there, you can travel free on the train to the stadium. I'm not quite sure what the radius is for a league game, but I know that they're already announced. I think it might even be 100 miles for the Euros next summer. So if you're within 100 miles of a stadium, you can get the train for free. I've been lucky enough to be to Dortmund as well. I've been to a Dortmund game in the Yellow Wall, and it was exactly the same. We stayed in Dusseldorf, which was an hour away. Jumped on the train, showed a match ticket, no problem. Ticket price was, I think, we paid €20 or something like that, €25, which again, you can't really argue with that for top flight German football.
Oh, that's a good price. Oh man,
yeah,
that's good.
It's easy to buy tickets online. You didn't have to jump through a million hoops. To release the tickets for public sale, you created an account, you logged in, you bought them, and it was all digitally delivered. So from that point of view, tremendous. Really good, brilliant atmosphere. Loads happening outside the grounds. The bands playing the same music.
Yeah. Oh man, it'd be so good to see something even half as good as that in Scotland. So, are there any other improvements that you would really like to see? Obviously, we've talked league reconstruction, we've talked alcohol. Anything else?
I don't know. I think the National Stadium kind of annoys me a little bit because I'm a big Scotland fan as well. I think it's difficult to sit here and slate Hampden completely because I've had some unbelievable nights in it as well. But I think there's some sort of debate to be had about the National Stadium and where it is and how to get there, that sort of thing. Because getting home from Hampden really frustrates me, and I only live in the other side of Paisley, so I've not even got far to go. My heart bleeds for these people my heart breaks, sorry, for these people that are travelling further afield because it's such a horrible stadium to get out of. So that I'd like to see something happen with Hampden, but whether it's a completely new stadium or just a kind of restructured stadium, I think it could be a lot better. The running track really does my head in as well.
Yeah.
So that's not really a Scottish football thing per se, but it's something that certainly annoys me.
No, it is a big thing. I think it annoys all of us. And yeah, I live on the East Coast, and I like to get through to Hampden for national games whenever I can. And my word, yeah, such a difficult journey home, getting out of there. But it just shows up the joined up thinking that, the likes of the Bundesliga seem to have kind of pretty nailed, and the fact that I mean, it's obviously not just a football thing, but just in terms of like public infrastructure and transport, just isn't great in Scotland at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, to be fair, Hampden does have a lot of train stations around it and things like that, but it just doesn't seem to be particularly easy to get a train. So maybe it's not just the stadium's fault. Maybe there's a bit of ScotRail to blame there as well. I mean, you mentioned there about Switzerland and their trains. I'm old enough to remember when St Mirren got the Scottish Cup in 1987. At that time, you could get a thing called a football special, and they ran a train from Gilmer Street straight to Hampden, which you obviously it's not a connected line. That they put a train on, a special train for that day, and it was dozens of carriages long, and there was thousands, felt the thousands. I was quite young at the time. St Mirren fans all piling on this train. It took us straight from Paisley to Hampden, which I know Inverness actually had one. They had a special train put on for them last season as well because of the timing of their semi-final. But something that just you don't really see happening much anymore. And it would be good to see a bit more joined up thinking in public transport and football, and because that's really surely in this day and age we're wanting people to get public transport to games and not pollute the atmosphere with their dirty diesel cars and all that sort of stuff. So. But yeah, you've got to encourage it and make it cost effective.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's we're in danger of turning onto a completely different podcast here. But yeah, but yeah, I mean, it needs to be affordable, and obviously we should be encouraging people to take public transport wherever possible. I think just finally for me on this Hampden issue, well, I get the impression that the SFA haven't necessarily done much thinking about it, and again, it's just another one of these issues that is something that most fans would love to see. But again, it's kind of just like swept under the carpet. And maybe if we don't really address it, people will kind of forget about it and, just get used to it. Because Ian Maxwell, I saw an interview with him, obviously a couple of months ago when he was asked about this. And he was like, oh, it's the beginning of a journey for us with Hampden. And I looked it up because I distinctly remember him when he was appointed saying, oh, it's the beginning of a journey for us with Hampden. Eventually, it's so easy just to lose faith that, the people at the top of the game actually want to really try and do stuff. And obviously it's not a quick fix. Obviously, Hampden, it would be a huge expense to obviously renovate it or even to build a new stadium. But again, it just feels like we're not necessarily having that conversation.
No, totally. I think even if you got rid of the running track and squared the stadium off, it makes such a huge difference. That sounds really easy when you say it. I'm sure it's really, really difficult, but probably mind-bogglingly expensive. But it just feels like we are in the dark ages a little bit. I've got tickets for the NFL down in London in October. I'm going to Spurs Stadium. I'm really looking forward to that because obviously looks like an incredible stadium to go and visit, but I think they paid over £1 billion for that. So if you're talking about building a brand new stadium, you've got very deep pockets, and obviously we don't really have a lot of money around in the game, and it's difficult kind of financial climate that we live in, that sort of thing, to think about throwing hundreds of millions of pounds at a stadium. But eventually somebody's going to have to do something about it, whether they renovate Hampden or build something new or whatever they do, but definitely something needs to be done.
Yeah, nice. Okay. Well, that's 3 nice big topics, Dave. Are you happy with those? Is there anything else you want to throw out there?
I think that's it. Yeah, otherwise I'll be here all night. But yeah, no, as I say, I think there's plenty to be positive about. I think just some of these aren't small changes, obviously, that we've discussed, but I think in terms of the leagues, some fairly small changes there would go a long way, I think, to making the game just a little bit better.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, some things are difficult to change, but there are some things that are smaller, some small tweaks that we really could do with making. I'm going to ask you the magic wand question. Now, it's up to you whether you want to just pick one of those 3 things that we've already talked about, or whether you want to pick something completely new. But if you had a magic wand and you could fix just the one thing about Scottish football, what would it be?
If it was a magic wand, it would be having a league that wasn't completely dominated by 2 teams. That would be my dream, would be that we'd have a league that even 3, 4, 5 teams could potentially win. I think that's the one thing when you're going into a new season, you don't have that dream. You don't have that dream that it could happen. Obviously it happened down south with like Sir Leicester, but it's not really the same because they were still throwing hundreds of millions at it. In Scotland, it just feels it kills me a little bit that what was it 1983 that
It was 84, 85.
84, 85. So pretty much since I was 12 years old, I've never known anybody else win the Premiership or the Premier League, and that kills me a little bit. I'd love, even if it wasn't my team, I'd love to see a team go for it, and even if they didn't win it, at least run them close. We've not had it for so long. 1990 Aberdeen, probably the closest we've had. That would be my magic wand, but all the two of them bugger off, and we have it in reverse. Which I actually, joking aside, I think that will happen eventually. I think they will eventually go to some sort of European League. Whether they leave something behind, I don't know, but I definitely think that'll happen. It's been talked about a million times, but eventually I can see something happening there.
Okay. Well, I wasn't sure if that ship had sailed because obviously there was talk about the English, obviously moving to the English leagues, but the English leagues are now so strong. They don't really need Celtic or Rangers.
No, absolutely they don't. I think it might be the other leagues. I think it might be the Nordic leagues or something like that. I don't know, North European or whatever it's called, but I feel that the TV companies eventually will get bored and they'll try and manufacture something, and I think it will happen. I'm pretty sure it will happen somehow or other.
Obviously, given the fact that, Aberdeen, obviously this year are going to have, group stage football until Christmas, and Hearts and Hibs obviously have got a chance to get there as well. If one of those clubs, in theory, did kind of get their act together and actually implemented some sort of innovative strategy, whether it's embracing like the Moneyball thing that Midtjylland do, or whether it's just embracing youth, if they were actually to go down a slightly different route rather than just doing the kind of same old stuff, I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility in the next few years. Say one of them was to get regular European group stage football for a few years, build up a bit of a pot, try and do something innovative. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that another club could mount some sort of challenge.
Yeah, I'd like to agree. I mean, it's obviously, if Aberdeen, Hearts, Hibs, St Mirren, we're going to challenge those two. That would be a dream. I would love to see someone else win the top flight, even if it was just once.
Yeah, I'll also add on the fact that the other thing you would need is both Celtic and Rangers to have a bit of a collapse at that given year, in the same way that when Leicester won the Premier League, all the other clubs kind of just had a bit of a meltdown.
Yeah.
So, but the stars can align.
I would hope so. It would be magic, and I think everybody would, apart from fans of those two clubs, would enjoy it just to see some team giving the two of them a bloody nose over the course of a whole season. We can but dream.
Do you know what? As long as it wasn't the other one winning it, I don't know if they'd be actually. I don't know if they'd actually be that pissed off.
Yeah, but I mean, they're always moaning about lack of competition, so that would give them something to think about. But yeah, to be honest, I've often thought about, as the Champions League money gets bigger and bigger and bigger, whether somebody might eventually take a punt on a team and go, do you know what? If we buy this club, we can get them for a couple of million, and maybe spend 20 million, make them, competitive, as you say. With 10, 20, 30, 40 million, you might be able to really mount a charge at it and go for it. I don't know how much money it might take, and then if you got to unlock the Champions League money, maybe there's a business model there that somebody might have a punt on when they get bored buying English teams. But yeah, that would be interesting to see if that happened. If somebody really wealthy bought a Scottish club and was determined to split the duopoly, that'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, man, I wish I had a few spare million. Like, I would love to have a play with a Scottish club and take them, yeah, take them into Europe. Someone you don't, someone you don't even necessarily expect. Suddenly you're rocking up with Bonnie Rig Rose in the Europa Conference League.
Yeah, I mean, the sugar daddy thing is kind of obviously quite frowned upon, but I wouldn't necessarily be that happy if it was my own club. But I wouldn't mind seeing somebody else have a right good punt at it with a few million behind them.
Yeah. Cool. I think on that note, Dave, we'll probably bring the podcast to a close. But thank you very much for being a guest. It's been brilliant having you on.
No problem. Thanks very much for having me. Appreciate it.
And yeah, might get you on again in the future if you're up for it. So thanks very much, Dave, and thank you to everyone who was listening.